agree to that, we got to bet. If not, it's just more, bark, bark, bark. Speaking of barking, the one, the only, I believe he's with us, right? I thought I heard the beep. Sam, we heard you needed a minute. Was that the makeup chair? Did you have to talk to your people? These athletic folks, man, I'm telling you, it's worth it for the content, but it's always something. Good morning.
I mean, if you take a look at the screen, you know it's not the makeup chair. This is called the you want the TMI answer. When you leave town for a long time because you're covering the Olympics, and then you go log on to a laptop that stayed at home, meaning it hasn't been logged onto, and you have to jump through 15 security steps to get back in. Apologies for the delay, but we are here.
Well, we are always happy to have you. Welcome home. Drunk neighbor John's been all over the text accusing me of not knowing what truculent meant, amongst other things, and talking your business out of school, which we won't share everything. But welcome home. Sam, I think first question, we got a lot to get to. First question is, A, why the hell did Detroit fire Monty Williams? And B, do you agree? I think the funniest thing Detroit could do right now ever in the history of the NBA is to hire Dan Hurley.
Yeah. I mean,
please make it happen. Or JJ Redick would be second.
The JJ thing would be quite a curveball because it continues to look like he's the next Lakers coach, but we don't quite understand what the delay is. And so if the Lakers, did want him and lost him because of some mysterious delay, that would be strange. I mean, Monty, I don't have total clarity on what put it over the edge. They had just recently hired an assistant coach from New Orleans who was close with him, and it was kind of perceived that was a sign that he was going to be sticking around. That sort of money, Tom Gores is not hurting, has plenty of cash, but to send a guy packing with that much money left on his deal is pretty staggering. The biggest thing and the obvious factor there, was Trajan Langdon took over that front office after, spending a lot of years in New Orleans and wanted a clean slate. What I'm hoping to learn more about is, how did Monty move in these final weeks? There's some sense that, if you make it clear in some form or fashion that your heart's not in it anymore, which, there are some rumors that that's how he was kind of moving, then maybe that played a part. But yeah, still pretty surprising move.
And I know we're speculating on rumors. If you're saying maybe his heart wasn't in it, does that mean his heart wasn't in Detroit? Or could Monty be a player in Cleveland, LA, other potential openings? Do you think what do you think that part of him maybe not being in on it means?
The early reporting from elsewhere, this is not, this was an ESPN report, I believe, was that he would likely not be ready to jump back in, that he wanted to coach. So I'll just kind of relay that, I guess. If you go back to, it's funny, I talked on my podcast this week about this, to the way Monty got the job in the first place. And this is a little bit of a stretch, but I made this comparison between Monty Williams' situation going into Detroit, after getting fired in Phoenix, and then after telling everybody he didn't want to coach for a while, that he wanted a break. And the parallel I made was Paul George in free agency with the Clippers, like two situations where I don't personally think that Paul, I think he has concerns about the Clippers. I know I'm off on a tangent here, but possibly trading him if he resigns, because there have been signs of that in the past. And so if your heart's not in a certain venture, I think you should think twice about it. Well, when Monty went to Detroit, everybody knew that he wasn't really ready to coach again. And the reality of money is that just finally became such a big number that he did it. I don't think holistically that's the right type of way to enter a situation. And I think that bared out. I think Tom Gores should have thought a little more critically about where Monty was in life at that point.
Well, and it should be said, elephant in the room here, and we're alluding to it, but and this is pure speculation if this even was the case, which we don't know. But if anyone I know in sports had an excuse for their heart not being into coaching NBA players, it would be Monty Williams. And so if that does end up being a thing where he just ain't there as much as he wants to be. Sam, I think we all agree he's the one guy more than anyone that his story is unbelievably amazing, tragic, heartwarming, heartbreaking. And we were talking about it this morning. It was not that long ago where he was leading the biggest resurgence in the NBA. He was the coach of the year twice. And more than that, just this story of perseverance through unspeakable tragedies, and his ability to bring culture and players together was really the talk of the NBA. That it seems like that was 5 minutes ago.
For sure. And the people watching on video saw me playing with my phone. I was trying to confirm the backstory there. So in the timeline, so 2016, his wife Ingrid dies in a tragic car accident. And not only, like you said, was that just unbelievably painful for him and his family and their kids, but his kind of resilience through that was pretty inspirational for a lot of people. And then he had talked going into getting the Pistons job about he remarried and he was in a different chapter and was trying to kind of live his life. And then his second wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. So no question, off the court he's had a lot of struggles. And I think again that would probably lead me to believe that he's ready to take a breather and just go. He's got a ranch outside of San Antonio, and I think that's his happy place, and I would imagine he's going to be there quite a bit.
Can I just, Jason, real quick, I want to follow up on something that you and I were talking about earlier. And again, Sam, I don't know if you have any clarity on this, but I've always wondered, is there a standard in the NBA? For example, let's say Monty, some team wants to hire Monty next year. He's owed 5 years, $65 million. If he gets hired by another team, does he still get the 565? Do contracts vary on this? Does the other team pick some of that up? Do you have any insight on that at all?
I mean, I believe it's, that typically it's just an offset. So, I mean, that is the funny part of the Lakers situation is that, the question becomes, could they get him on the cheap because the Pistons owe him so much money? And it would only, just kind of barely lessen what the Pistons owe him. Now, that's just my general 2 cents on the way it normally works. I think that'd be a terrible look for the Lakers because they're already being, some people think the Dan Hurley offer wasn't enough. So, and historically their coaching salaries have not been at the top of the league. So the perception would be that, let's say a team like the Lakers went and got a guy like Monty Williams, you'd be getting him just so you get a bargain. But yeah, typically it's an offset.
One more thing on it too, Sam. I know it's new front office, as you alluded to, in Detroit. And when you do this 2 months in, it feels like maybe they've got someone in line. Any word on who the Pistons might be looking at?
No, although, I mean, not for me, admittedly, yesterday was kind of re-entry mode after the finals. I wasn't banging the phones too hard, but they reportedly, according to Vinny Goodwill, my buddy from Yahoo Sports, and we hit on it earlier that he did report that JJ was a name to watch. So that I thought was interesting. You still got James Borrego, who folks think is probably headed to Cleveland, but that hasn't happened yet. And from there, we'll see. The draft is coming up quick for the Pistons. That's a bigger priority than most teams. So they got some work to do.
Who are the Kings going to draft, Sam?
Couldn't tell you, buddy.
Are they going to keep the pick?
I mean, obviously plenty of chatter about them being aggressive and tied to Zach LaVine again, tied to who was the second name that they got tied to?
LaVine and Caruso. Then and then you got obviously the Kuzma thing chilling there. I mean, there's been a couple.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think they're in the draft business right now. So I would lean toward towards them trying to get something done. But it's always hard when you don't know what those conversations have been. But I think, this is, we've talked about it back when Mike Brown's contract situation was in flux, just how important of an offseason this was and to finally, go all into what, whatever that means for them. When the West is as good as it is, when you got so much money out to Sabonis and Fox and Keegan Murray, getting better along the way, they need another piece. So I think they're going to be very active this week.
Yeah, and one of those pieces that Kings fans are hoping is Malik Monk's return. And the last 24 hours or so, everybody's spending time trying to guess what his social media post means and his caption and all that.
What did he do? I missed it. What did he do?
It was just, what was it, Dave? Him floating on a raft in a pool, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then it's
boy.
my life's about to take off like a rocket.
Yes.
And then everyone's like, Houston. Well, Houston doesn't have a ton of money, but trying to read. I mean, look, he's going to get paid whether it is Sacramento, Sam, or somewhere else. So, again, that's a tough exercise to try to read that. But I think the bottom line, Sam, is there's going to be plenty of teams going for Malik, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. But it's funny. It's been years, it feels like anyway, I could be wrong, since free agency was, had this kind of pop to it, if that makes sense. Free agency had become less relevant because every time we had a guy of any repute coming up on free agency, he'd find a way to push for a sign and trade months earlier, and trades had become the kind of the headline way of moving from city to city. This one, not only are there some good names in the mix, but you have these wings where their market is going to have to all unfold together. I mentioned Paul George earlier. I think he's at the top of the list. And then when you get into the Klay Thompson, Malik Monk territory, somebody like Malik is, for one, I think it'll take a minute. Like unless, what if in Orlando or some team like that said, you know what, we'd rather be, deliberate and proactive and just put a bunch of money on the table for a guy like Malik rather than waiting to see what Paul George could, like Paul George might take a while. You know what I mean? So I'm very curious to see how these teams play it. Obviously Philly and Orlando and Sac get mentioned the most often as the teams that are probably in the running for a guy like Malik, but that goes for Paul, that goes for Klay. San Antonio's got a bunch of money. What are they going to do? So yeah, I don't know what Malik's post means. There's a lot of pools in Orlando. That's the first thought that I had. But that seems a little vague. The Rocket thing. Yeah. I don't know. Is there a way for them to get that done? They've got a good young team. I don't know I don't think he'd fit in very well, but we'll see. It's going to be active.
Does Pascal Siakam's deal affect anything? Since the kind of parameters were there, does that really rock anything at all for you?
No.
Yeah.
That's when he went there. That was like the messaging right away was that he wasn't going anywhere. Now, obviously, if it would have gone incredibly poorly, then maybe it goes the other way. But no, that's kind of goes back to the whole thing where the Kings were going after Siakam, and then, they had the intel that he didn't necessarily want to be here long term.
We ever figure out why?
Oh man, now you're gonna put me on the spot.
No, if you don't, then that's fine.
No, I remember. I'm just trying to remember what I said back then, because this is admittedly one of those where, like, I'll go to the two or 3 yard line. I don't want to say everything. There's a.
All right, hold on. Everybody listening, I need you to turn your radios down for the next 30 seconds. Tune out. I'm giving you permission. Tune out.
Sam's just going to tell us.
Yeah. All right, Sam, it's you, me, Chris, and Jason. Go ahead.
It's literally, you could argue it's petty, and I don't know. I'm not trying to take sides here, so it could be, off. But
that's fine. We'll take
for better or worse on the Siakam side. Mm-hmm. There was an inference from his camp that over the years, and I don't know what form this took, but that there were like behind the scenes, somewhat disparaging remarks made that came from the Kings about his game. And the way it was framed to me was that in an attempt to drive down what it would take to get him, that like some gossipy type feedback on his game had gotten back to him. So it's literally like if you're if you're in school and you just hear that somebody's talking a little bit about you and you don't forget, that is the way it was put to me from his side.
Interesting. Yeah. See, Jason, I told you words hurt.
I know.
You shouldn't have said that.
I've got to be careful, more careful on that. Sam, you said you were kind of getting back home, getting used to that mode. You were following the finals around, and I don't know. I guess your overall final takeaway from kind of a pretty dominant performance by Boston.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because as happy as I am to be home, I'm always a little bit bummed when the finals are not a better matchup. So I found myself even in game 5 going, all right, like I kind of want Dallas to win because, then the Celtics are going to have to at least reckon with the Dallas crowd and then it will have been a 6-game series and because Dallas was so good going into this matchup. And this knucklehead who gets paid to analyze basketball even picked him to win the whole thing. And then you look at it. I mean, I think a lot of Luka's performances were disappointing. And I don't use that word as if I'm in my feelings about a guy, but like he was so good going in. And then to see him get tripped up by some of his demons, arguing with the refs, effort on defense, all those things was unfortunate. But you got to give the Celtics credit because he didn't do it in a vacuum. He did it because the Celtics are so good and applied so much pressure to him and were so much more composed and mature and together that the end result was Luka, he had some good numbers, but like not leading his team the way he needed to. Kyrie obviously struggling and a ton. I thought about as a Kings little tint, I guess it's crazy because you just obviously the Kings should have drafted Luka Doncic. That's indisputable. But it was so interesting to me. Get out of here, Dave.
What? I didn't say anything.
Okay.
That's
How
fine.
was your play-in victory? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, Jesus.
Shots fired.
Hold on. Let me put on my helmet here.
Yeah.
Keep going. Jeez, we're going old school.
But like I found it so interesting. And I'll be honest, I kind of want to call Vlade and talk to him about this. Like that some of the qualities that concerned Vlade when he made that choice, like were his Luka's undoing. Now you just can't. You got to remind everybody it was on the finals stage, the NBA finals.
Right.
The Kings have been celebrating their Western Conference Finals appearance for more than 20 years. So like getting to the finals is a massive accomplishment. But Luka was not at his best once he got there.
So where I thought you were going, and that's where you were going, was simply this. And let's just, all fun aside, they should have drafted Luka. Marvin Bagley was a mistake. Like all that on the table. But I've shared before ad nauseum the conversations I've had, and Sam, you had the same conversations with Vlade. Like, for example, the whole he was beefing with Luka's dad farce that was out there. And then the concerns in the front office, that he's known Luka since he was 12 and or younger. And there were concerns about the length of his career, the shape he was in or that he wasn't, were there mirrorings of his dad who Vlade played with? Neither of us are obviously trying to say that they made the right move, but I agree with you. I think that it's okay to say, yeah, you guys screwed up by not drafting Luka Doncic. And we saw on this stage in the finals that, yes, some of the trappings and issues that Vlade was talking about may have come to the surface. By the way, he's 25 years old. He could change those. So we'll see.
That's what's crazy, guys, is like Jason Tatum was celebrated, as a guy who like he was right next to Al Horford as a guy who had been waiting so long to get a title. Right. And so it cracks me up that Jason Tatum is the same age as Luka Doncic.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, that's a credit to Jason. He's already accomplished a lot more than Luka and has a championship now. So yes, Luka is 25. The one other thing to wrap that Kings part of this discussion is that, listen, Vlade's logic was always that if he got Luka, he would have to trade De'Aaron because he didn't think they could play together.
Right.
When you're talking about it, and I always hate making players sound like assets or commodities, but there's an element of truth in that. Like the idea that they used that pick to get a guy who is irrelevant in the NBA. Like even if it didn't work, you needed to try to put Luka alongside De'Aaron and just see where it goes. And if it's ugly early on and you don't see it happening, then make something happen because Luka was an elite player, But, man, you see Luka and Kyrie finding a way to make it work.
Mhm.
And I know De'Aaron and Kyrie are not exact comps by any means. But, that's another part of it for me is I wonder, like, could they have played together?
Well, Jason, they did it with Fox and Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
Not the same guy, but still the
Right.
same
They
concept.
looked at it.
Didn't work well.
But yet we're able to,
Yes.
you know.
I'm sorry. You're making my point, which is like,
Yes.
Tyrese turned into Sabonis. Like
Right.
Marvin turned into nothing,
Yeah. Sam, we probably one of the more difficult things maybe the finals was picking an MVP. You got a chance to vote. I had wondered how much of a factor even if Drew Holiday entered anybody's mind, but it looked at between the 11 votes, 7 of them, including you, picked Jaylen Brown, 4 picked Jason Tatum.
Here we go again.
Yeah, tell us. Well, he's on the right side of this.
Here's Andre Iguodala all over again.
Dave thinks you're on the wrong side of this, but anyway.
I was looking at the ballot. I kept searching for Iguodala. I couldn't find the name.
How tough was it?
Not that tough, but like tough enough that I had to, it is a funny unofficial process. You end up, coming to your own opinion, but the clock is ticking. You have to make the pick before the end of the game, unless it's like they really, really encourage you to make the pick, near the end of the game. And in this case, that wasn't that big of a deal, but you're kind of polling people on press row. I was texting with a few colleagues of mine who I knew had votes to see what they were thinking. And then admittedly thinking, all right, don't text too many. I'm not trying to collude here. But like Jaylen was more consistent. He was more impactful on both ends of the floor. Jason's playmaking was the thing that might have swayed me a bit. The truth is, like, the idea of the numbers he put up in game 5, when you're up 3-1, when you had a 20-point lead, fairly early in the game, it was almost, is a funny way of putting it, it was almost annoying to me how he was piling on, because he was I knew that he was making the choice look more controversial than I think it really was, because those numbers do not have the same value that they would have had, in game 2 and game 3, when everything was in the balance. We knew where this series was going by the time he piled on at the end. Jaylen Brown guarding Luka was a massive factor. And the fact that he, did a nice job on that end. Jason, I know shooting and scoring is only part of the game, but the fact that I forget where he landed on shooting percentage, but, being high 30s, maybe I think he might've hit 40 on shooting percentage. He just didn't shoot the ball well. And I thought, just eyeball test watching those games, Jaylen Brown was more consistent and more impactful. So I thought he was the guy.
So was there ever, and look, you make a great case, all kidding aside, basketball's played on both sides of the ball and his defense was extraordinary, but was there ever any point where you were like, well, one guy led the team in points, rebounds, and assists, so there's your MVP?
No, because percentages matter a lot. I mean, they do. Like, it's inefficient. What did he land on shooting wise, Dave? Do you have?
I think. Well, I'm just going to guess off the top of my head, 58%. That's probably wrong.
I think that is wrong.
I'll look it up right now. But I think it wasn't at high 30s. I think it was something like that.
It probably got better as it went along, because it wasn't good early on.
It won great. Let me get into his game log as we do this on the air here. 38.8. Oof.
Yeah.
I mean, that means, that means he made 4 out of 10. That's a Hall of Fame in baseball.
Right.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I mean, I forget where I was going to go. Yeah. I thought he was the guy.
I got you.
Not a hard one, but it is the two. I know real quick, the two-way thing. I know you're joking about it, but it drives me nuts. Like,
no, I'm not joking about it. No, legitimately, his defense. I'm not joking about that.
Well, but Iguodala, and again, I know LeBron's numbers were still monstrous in that series, but if you go look at that fork in the road moment when he entered the starting lineup, he turned LeBron into, from Thanos to Spider-Man, and that was enough to turn the series, and Steph was not guarding anybody. And so defense matters a lot. And ironically, Jaylen, if you read the story I wrote that night, had some really interesting comments when they played Luka earlier in the season, about the way we talk about defense and how we just ignore how some guys don't guard.
Right.
And it would certainly seem like a shot at Luka. So, and Jason guards. So I need to say that part. He does. He just didn't have that assignment.
Sam Amick of The Athletic. Welcome back home, friend. Your season not over yet, but just about a month or so away, hopefully from some good old-fashioned family time. Appreciate you each and every week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Be good.
Right, thank you. That's Sam Amick. Let's turn off my mic. Let him hang it up. We'll take a break. When we come back, Willie Mays, we lose a legend. We have more memories and sound.